The letter came on a Tuesday, a collections notice, my name printed clean across the top, demanding $14,000 for a credit line I never opened. I remember standing in my kitchen holding it, certain there'd been a mix-up, some clerical error the bank would apologize for and fix in 10 minutes. I called that afternoon expecting reassurance. Instead, the woman on the line read off an address I didn't recognize, a phone number that wasn't mine, and a name on the account that made my stomach drop. It wasn't a stranger's name. It was my sister's boyfriend, tied to an account opened with my social security number, 6 months earlier. My own sister had done this to me. My name is Denise. I'm 46, married to Mark for 18 years, and until that Tuesday, I would have told you my sister Renee was one of the few people in this world I trusted completely. We grew up 2 years apart in the same small house outside Dayton, sharing a room, splitting chores, covering for each other with our mother, Barbara, when one of us broke curfew. Renee was the wilder one, quicker to anger, quicker to charm her way out of trouble, always one step ahead of whatever mess she'd made. I was the steady one, the one who paid bills on time, kept a budget, built credit slowly and carefully, over 20 years of discipline. I never imagined that discipline would become something worth stealing. Renee's money troubles were nothing new. She'd been between jobs more times than I could count, always with a reason that sounded almost plausible. A boss who had it out for her, a company that folded, a landlord who wouldn't work with her. Mark used to raise an eyebrow every time I lent her another couple $100, but I always told him family helps family. What I didn't know was that somewhere along the way, Renee had stopped asking to borrow. She'd started simply taking, quietly, using pieces of my identity she'd had access to for years, pieces I'd never once thought to guard against my own sister. The first call to the bank only uncovered one account. I told myself that was the whole problem, a single bad decision I could untangle with enough patience. I filed a fraud report, changed my passwords, and called Renee to ask her, gently, if she knew anything about it. She laughed it off immediately, said it was probably identity theft from some data breach, told me not to worry, she'd help me look into it. I wanted so badly to believe her that I didn't notice how quickly she changed the subject to something else entirely. 2 weeks later, a second notice arrived, then a third. Each one tied to accounts I'd never opened, each one built on information only a handful of people had access to. My birth date, my mother's maiden name, the answers to security questions I'd shared once, years ago, in a moment of sisterly trust. Mark started keeping a folder, printing every statement, dating every call. He'd wanted to involve a lawyer from the beginning. I kept insisting there had to be an explanation that didn't involve Renee, because the alternative felt like more than I could carry. When I finally confronted her directly, sitting across from her at her kitchen table, she didn't deny it the way a stranger might. She got defensive instead, said I'd always had more than her, that I could afford a few extra charges without even noticing, that I was making a much bigger deal out of this than it needed to be. I remember sitting there in silence, waiting for an apology that never came, only justification stacked on justification, each one smaller and stranger than the last. I called my mother next, hoping for support. Instead, Barbara asked me to be patient with Renee, reminded me she was going through a hard time, suggested that maybe I could just pay off what she'd charged and we could move past it as a family. That conversation told me more than any bank statement had. My own mother was asking me to absorb the cost of my sister's crime, quietly, so nobody had to face what it actually was. I hired a forensic accountant the following week, a woman named Karen, who specialized in exactly this kind of family financial fraud. She pulled records going back 3 years, not the 6 months I'd assumed. Credit cards, a personal loan, and, most alarming of all, an application in my name for a home equity line of credit against a house I didn't own. Renee hadn't made one mistake. She'd built a pattern, careful and repeated, using my identity as a financial safety net for years. That's when Karen found the detail that changed everything for me. Buried in an old email thread Renee had accidentally left open on a shared family laptop, there was a message from over a year earlier. My mother telling Renee she'd figure out how to keep Denise from finding out. My mother had known, not for weeks. For more than a year, she'd chosen her favorite daughter's comfort over my right to know my own identity was being used against me. Renee laughed at first, the same laugh she'd used at her kitchen table weeks earlier, calling the whole thing dramatic, insisting I was blowing a family misunderstanding out of proportion. I let her talk until she ran out of things to say. Then I told her what Karen had confirmed that morning. The forensic report was already in the hands of a detective, and identity theft against a family member still carries the same legal weight as it would with any stranger. The laughter stopped the moment she understood I wasn't asking her for an apology. I was informing her of consequences already set in motion. My mother tried one last time to intervene, asking me to consider dropping it, reminding me Renee was still my sister. I told her that being my sister never gave anyone permission to steal from me, and that her year of silence had cost me more than the money ever did. Renee's composure cracked for the first time that afternoon. She admitted, quietly, that it had started as one loan she meant to pay back, and that once nobody noticed, she kept going because it was easier than fixing her own finances. Hearing her say it out loud, plainly, without the excuses, was almost harder than the discovery itself had been. It confirmed there had never been a single desperate moment. There had only been years of choosing me as the easiest option. Renee was charged with financial identity fraud. The court ordered restitution, a payment plan structured over several years, along with a formal record that will follow her for the rest of her life. It wasn't the outcome I once would have wanted for my own sister, but it was the only outcome that treated what happened to me as real. Rebuilding my credit took the better part of a year, working line by line through disputes, closures, and new accounts opened under careful new security. Mark stood beside me through every phone call, and I've never once heard him say he told me so, even though he'd earned the right to. My relationship with my mother has never fully recovered, and I've made peace with that. I still love her, but I no longer mistake her silence for neutrality. Some boundaries exist because trust, once spent this completely, has to be rebuilt slowly, if it can be rebuilt at all. What this year taught me is that loyalty without honesty isn't protection. It's a debt someone else eventually has to pay. I don't regret trusting my sister for most of my life. I only regret how long it took me to see that trust has to be earned continuously, even by family, and never assumed simply because of blood. If this story hit close to home, or if you've ever had to choose the truth over family peace, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more real stories like this, hit subscribe so you never miss the next one.